Before we move on to the next object, just one last thing in terms of misrepresentations we were talking about. There's such a rich history of Benin, which I think very few people in this country really know about and appreciate. Do you think that the kind of portrayal of resistance as well to you know the strength and resistance to the British Empire has been underrepresented as well? Perhaps yourself, Ehi, do you think there's, because we often hear of you know the difficulties African people had, that they were taken over, they were turned into slaves, and this, you know, whereas we very rarely hear of areas of Africa which were successfully
to talk about this, yes. Because we're talking about the celebration of 200 years of the bi-century celebration of slave trade. You don't talk about slave trade with African communities without talking about the riverine areas, because it was the riverine chiefs that really had one-to-one contact with the European masters, or the slave masters. Benin Kingdom, yes, was at the coast, but the Obas were so powerful, and they were a little bit, Benin is not like a riverine city or town, it's like an inland, and it was difficult for people to go a little bit inland. I'm sure that was one of the reasons they had, you know, for having that extra strong hold. There was this barrier of having to go interland to get more slaves from the Benin Kingdom. And in Benin today, we have what we call moat all around the city. Yeah. It's like a big, you dig holes all around the city to prevent people from accessing the inner lands. When the white masters came into Africa, when they first visited Africa, they visited the coastal areas, because the ships would come, they would first visit the coastal area. So they had main contact with the fishermen, the chiefs, and the kings on the riverine area. The contact they had with the inner land, where the coastal chiefs played the middleman role between the inner land chiefs and the white men. Okay. So they didn't have a direct contact with the inner lands. But much later, of course, yes, they did. But I think that was much after the slave trade had gone down a little bit. The roots had gone a little bit, and we were beginning to. But they did try. They tried to do that, but they didn't succeed, because the Benin Kingdom was very powerful, and these men were great warriors. So they fought. Yeah,
there were. I mean, even in areas where slaves were captured, you know, initially there was resistance, and you know they tried, but because the Europeans came, you know, they had, you know, all the weapons and whatever. They were able to overcome, but it wasn't like it was easy for them to penetrate certain areas of that region. So they met with resistance initially, and that's the kind of resistance she was talking about. Because like what he mentioned, the Benin Kingdom they had trenches dug around the city, and those trenches were meant, you know, during the times of wars and everything, even when they were fighting battles, you know, with other kingdoms and whatever, those trenches were meant to protect them and to help them, you know, because when you are coming as an army and you don't know, you know, if you don't know the what's it called, the land of the land, yeah,
the
geography of the area, you find that you just plunge head on into those trenches. You know, so it was
inland. It wasn't on the coastal
yeah,
region, so
you
you
know,
didn't have direct access.
Direct access. So
to the
so they
inland.
did meet with a lot of resistance. You know, when they came.
Just to add little to what she said. Regarding to the slave trade, the Benin themselves took their own people, which is not behaving, which is a destroyer. When Oba is trying to repair and is destroying, killing children, making crops in the farm not to grow, things are not moving on. Any family that had such a person, when the slave masters came, they would just take that person and hand over, because it's an abomination to kill in that land. Just kill your own people. It was an abomination. All they did is just to hand over them, those type of people, to the slave masters. That is the only time the Benin were involved in slave trade.
Okay.
If you go to Museum Dock in Liverpool, the first talk there, you see a man involved with Benin, one of the European in them days. You hear what the man says about Benin. And two, we are not here for that today. When James Philip went to the sea, he thought it was wise. He went to Benin, went to the palace, he was welcome, everybody received him, not knowing he had come to Benin to corner the king. This is the time of Ovorani. I'm talking now about 1875 to 1897. He was the only one who went there. He thought he could corner them, but at the time they realized he has soldiers in the sea, everybody in the sea, then the warriors, they now came out and said, oh gentlemen, isn't so? We've called you a friend, we've received you, treat you well, you can't come and betray us. Then that is where the Benin massacre came out. You see, all the sheep that went to Benin never came back. Nobody would kill them. They became pregnant overnight, where a man will carry pregnancy and in the morning it's gone. Benin has a way of fighting. And the Benin massacre too, I think is still very fresh in every European's mind till tomorrow.